Hello everyone and welcome back to another session of Experts Talk. This time it'll be a little bit different. Elkhan and myself will be doing a podcast that will pretty much cover most of the important subjects in the real estate market in Dubai. But before we go into these details, I want to take the chance to introduce everybody to the new AX Capital office, which by the way is something that I haven't seen before in the real estate industry, at least in Dubai and in other countries. This office is amazing, right?
It is.
I could not stop looking at details from the second I walked in.
I mean, a month into it, I still can't comfort myself into it because it still has that wow factor to it.
I know it took quite some time to finish this office, right? Because I remember you being at different locations, different branches, waiting for this entire floor to be done. But then when I came here, obviously I've seen it on the camera, I've seen it on pictures. I don't think it do it enough justice. Seeing it in person is completely, I gotta say, it's wild. You know, your eyes are like, what am I looking at? The details, wood ceilings, marble floors, marble walls, the fish tanks, the lights, the furniture. And now I understand why it took all this time to finish. Amazing, absolutely. Amazing, very well done.
I think it was time well dedicated to what it was aimed to achieve. Definitely.
I'm in love with it. And surely, besides, there's actually a few videos that were already made to show the office. But you and I got to have like a separate video done, like a walkthrough. We have to do this. It has to be done. It has to be done in details to show everybody else what it really looks like inside here. We're just sat in the tiny little corner of this office, but this office is insanely massive.
So it blows your mind away.
It does, honestly, it does. Since it's been a while that we haven't done these podcasts or videos or expert talks or whatever you want to call them. Obviously, we both have been busy. Everyone knows that the real estate market has been doing really well in 2021.
Explosive,
We've been busy doing that. They've been busy finishing this office, and now it's time to do it again.
I mean, in order to be able to compensate all that kind of time that we skipped out on, I think it's best just to sit down this time and not really look at a time gap or a time restriction. Keep it as a podcast, essentially. You know,
I had a few points that I really wanted to cover, but one of the most things that I wanted to focus on is the payment plans, right? So with all of the booming and the craziness and increase in prices that happened in the real estate market in 2021, we need to talk about payment plans with the developers and the new projects. What happened to those? Do they still exist? Do we still have payment plans as long as the same longevity as the ones that we had in 2020? What are the changes compared to last year?
That's so coincidental because I just literally did a training here on payment plans the other day, literally yesterday.
Right.
So huge, very passionate subject of mine because, look, payment plans are associated with financial structures.
Right.
And for me, coming from a financial background, to be able to blend in the worlds of real estate, asset acquisition, and the world of finance, to me, there's just been such an opportunity that I can't be grateful enough for. Really. And I do want to dive into this much later because there are certain things. Yes, payment structures have changed here. It's a given, right? You can't make a identical comparison between 2019 or 2020 to this year, right? Developers understand the pace of how how assets are moving nowadays. And there's been changes, of course, but they've not been negative. They've not been negative by any means.
Okay. But look, I mean, I'm comparing it to exactly a year ago, right? So this is summer 2021 compared to summer 2020. Summer 2020 was a mess. Obviously, we were just coming out of the restrictions in terms of, are you allowed to fly? Are you allowed to drive? Are you allowed to eat? You know? So, at some point, I've seen payment plans in Dubai last year that were as long as 10 years. Even 6 years, 7 years by the top developers, not private developers.
Still existing today.
It does.
Yeah, still existing today.
So what
Very
changed?
Selectively now, but
So now it's based on the project.
Project and developer,
Okay, right. I think this is in general a good sign because look, even though you have this massive increase in prices in real estate market, whether it's off plan or resale, the fact that the developers are still offering a payment plan, allow people that are still thinking, oh, is it too late? Because a lot of people are scared. You know, a lot of people are calling me, oh, did I miss my opportunity? I said, in a way, yes. You didn't buy at the rock bottom prices in 2020, but the fact that the payment plans are still there, then that's a good sign.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I had the exact same situation about a week ago. A very dear friend of mine who used to be, she initiated our relationship as client to agent.
You were asked, is it too late?
She asked me, Elkhan, I know I'm late, but I think now is the time to move.
Right.
Well, now I can move, rather, than as opposed to 2 years ago.
Yeah, now they've seen the signs, they've seen that, a lot of people are now seeing projects being completed, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
they're seeing projects being rising above
How
the
many
ground,
completion
right?
certificates have been delivered since a year ago? A bloody lot, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Right? So many buildings are either been completed or on that last teetering edge where they're about to be completed as well.
Right. There's another thing. Do you believe that, and this is something when you ask me about what is the most thing that you're passionate about talking about when it comes to real estate, and I've always said this to you, Elkhan, being involved in the real estate market for a couple of years now, I believe that the biggest gap that we're not being able to bridge together yet is the fact that agents, real estate brokers in this market, in Dubai specifically, are always being blamed.
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
So they're being blamed left and right. You can see someone who's a top expert, 10 plus years, with an extreme amount of knowledge, being blamed for not knowing something specific, right? And then you also see someone who's a rookie, just started real estate, also being blamed for not having the right knowledge. But what happened to the consumer, right?
Yeah.
End users, whether they're investors or whether they're buying houses for their own purpose. In my opinion, there's a lot of consumers that still lack the knowledge about the process of buying, the information about a specific project, and the real estate market in this country in general. And nobody wants to blame the consumer. All the blame is going to the agent. Why?
It's that mentality,
how can we
right?
fix that?
It's that mentality where the buyers always rise, which is so unbelievably wrong.
Why? I mean, why has it to be the buyers always right?
Yeah, I mean, it cannot be that way in an investment industry, Sam.
I've experienced a few agents in Dubai where if they get a specific buyer that has this kind of perspective about this, the agent they're dealing with, then they stop dealing with that person. They stop dealing with that buyer. Right? So there's agents that have a very high self-respect that would not allow themselves to deal with these kind of buyers.
And I preach for that. I bloody evangelize that kind of perspective and that approach to the industry. Because yes, there are incompetent agents, and yes, there are incompetent consumers as well.
Because the goal is that the agent is supposed to deliver information to the buyer that the buyer doesn't know. Right?
Yeah,
and that's what really makes a difference. So I think buyers have
I know for a fact how much of a burning subject this is for you. And reflecting back to your time in actual sales and real estate as well, that's what you've identified, at least just in my estimates, that you've identified the problem, right? The problem is very real, Sam, right? Because this is just a black and white scenario of agents being stereotyped by consumers, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what industry or what kind of, what business it might be. This is just a classic scenario. Is it right? I do not believe it is, right? I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that we can make, because you don't give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Defending both agents and consumers, both entities have their due diligence to fulfill when it comes to entering the market.
So when you say due diligence from the consumer side, what are the things that considered basics or pillars, as you call them, that the consumers must know before they take on the judgment of saying this is an agent that doesn't know what they're doing or things like that? What a consumer should know, basically. Pillars like what?
I mean, good point.
And how would they get to that point where they know, okay, so I'm ready to buy an apartment in downtown Dubai, or I'm ready to buy a villa in one of the communities of Dubai land, or I'm ready to buy whatever it is, right? So how do they start searching, and what points they should look at, in your opinion?
Well, look, I'll be blatantly honest about one thing, right? You as a consumer entering this market, it's not like you hold the majority of the faults here, right? You hold equal faults with the other kind of structures that are there.
Right.
With the agents, with the agencies, with the governments, with developers, all these pillars essentially have their share of blame, right? And someone has to be blamed for what's going on here. But that circle, right, that loop, it's very elusive when you kind of try to pinpoint with accuracy. What do I mean by that is that, let's say you're a consumer, okay? You enter the market for the first time. Now let's be real. If you're living in a first world country where you have a good pay, a good paycheck, you've got a good pay slip, normally, in a normal scenario, and I'm overgeneralizing, sure, but normally you would not have the time or efficient time to go and study the historical literature of a city that you're about to invest in, right? You need to know past trajectories, you need to know future projections, you need to know where the successes of the city were, where the failures
It's very deep. So, you just brought up a subject that's very deep. I've never honestly thought about how to start thinking about what kind of pillars they should be when you start thinking about buying real estate, but that point is super, super deep, by the way.
Yeah, but this is in the defense.
People don't have time to look for
but this is in the defense of the consumer, because the consumer doesn't have the time, assuming that they live in a first world country, right? And they have the financial capacity to do this. So what do, right? Again, an overgeneralization. They find that third party, which is an agent, in that respected markets, and they try, at least to some modicum of degree, they try to put a little bit of faith in this individual as, all right, he or she potentially has my best interest, they know what my investment criteria is about, and they're going to make the right choice for me, or they're at least going to propose the right things for me, right? Now, on to problem number two, structure number two, the agents. You come fresh off the boat, and an industry like this is so willing to accept anybody into the industry, which is where the mistake lies, right? For the agencies.
So, right, I agree with that.
And for the governments.
I always protect agents, but and I put more blame on the consumer, to be honest with you, when it comes to like who should judge who in terms of knowledge. But with that, I agree with you. The fact that there's a lot of agents that come in so easily, joining brokerages in the real estate market here in Dubai, has a lot of factors that play into blaming the agent.
Absolutely. And now you see how that chain is starting to explode, how it's echoing down, right? So you got the consumer who feels like they should be putting at least a little bit of trust in an individual who might have their best interests, or they can go on an independent venture, right? And do all their due diligence, but God, that's going to affect your personal life. That's probably going to affect your professional life as well, your career, because the amounts of research you need to do is just monumental, right? To make a very accurate decision, right? But you have resources which you can utilize for this, right? And those resources should be these agents. Now, do they make the right decisions when they propose anything to you? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Again, you can't overgeneralize. You can't paint everyone with one brush.
Right. Yeah, it's when you are speaking to a consumer, right? And there's differences between different people that are buying for different reasons. And you can see where the conversation leads to whether you will know if that person has done a little bit of research or not by simple questions as of like, do you know what the average price per square feet in a specific area is, right? So if the consumer knows that answer, then you already feel better about that person, that buyer.
True, if they've done their research correctly, right? If it's not just some fallacy that they've come up with. Because I've met some consumers as well who tell me, well, bloody hell, I mean, the price per square foot in downtown is this. I mean, that's not a fair thing to say. It's not at all, because let me ask you this, in what demographic does that kind of doctrine, that tenet, where does it hold worth? Because if I talk about Shanghai, for example, are all the parts of Shanghai identical in terms of price per square foot? Come on.
Very good point.
Right?
Very good point.
The same with New York, the same with London, the same with many parts of the world, Moscow as well. I've recently come from Moscow, where I've seen price per square foot in the outskirts, and I've made those comparative analysis, towards where Lenin is buried, right? Where they just increase and skyrockets. It's insane. Right. You cannot hold those. It's not conventional to think about this, although people have made it conventional, right? Which is a very, very incorrect approach. If you're going to do that, then by all means, do your due diligence, right? Study the price of the land, because that's pivotal in actually setting the foreground for the prices, which developer back offices will work off of, right?
Right.
That's number one. Talk about the logistical expenses, right? Talk about the material costs. Talk about the time that the developer has actually initiated the idea as opposed to when they start selling, because all of that is lost opportunity cost, right? And since developers are in the bank, you know, in bed with the banks in Dubai, they're paying, right? In capital spending has been initiated, but this is their break-even point. This is where they begin. They're going down by the time they start to sell, right? Do all of those calculations fairly, right? And you'll come to your empirical answer, because otherwise you're just throwing facts in the air. Very.
It makes so much sense, you know, when you break it down like that. To be honest, I think it will take a lot more time, because like I've not seen it as much in other countries compared to what it is in Dubai. But you said it, because it's how easy it is for newbies to get into the real estate market here, and the lack of the research and analysis that consumer do from their side. But I'm sure eventually it will correct, right? Like everything else does.
Not unless, I don't see it correcting itself until people are made very aware of the actual problems that are existing in this market. And not just this market, Sam. I'm sure many markets face the same issues that we do, right? And it could be cross-industry as well. I really do not believe that the problems will change until people start to realize what is actually going on. Because let's say the masses, right, consumers, you and I, consumers, every consumer in the market is approaching the industry with a different mindset. They're no longer talking to agents, they're actually talking to advisors at that point, right? They've not just seen...
What's the difference?
They've not... the difference is, right, if you speak to an agent, and... Look, I personally hate the word agent.
Did I just trigger something in you?
I hate the word agent. I just
triggered another button.
Because when people call me, or when I speak to people and they associate me to an agent, I find it a little bit offensive, because the actual definition of an agent is you're putting your faith in me for me to execute an action that's on your best interest.
Is that because you come from a financial background yourself, and how necessary is it for an agent to have at least some sort of financial background?
I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I think it's, to a very bare-bone degree, necessary. You have to know numbers when you come into this industry. But for you to dedicate a big portion of your life in the pursuit of numbers, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
I think it's more important for you to do your due diligence in terms of education. You have to be so educated here. You have to self-educate yourself to such a degree where you know everything about the city, right? It takes time, it takes trial and error, I know, right? I really know, right? I've been through it. And I've seen many people in our office go through it as well. But when you reach that degree where you point out any building to me, Sam, I can at least, with a good form of accuracy, tell you the historical literature of that place, right? The past problems, if it's been successful or not, what kind of series in that building are actually in the most demand, right? So many little factors that you ought to know as an advisor.
So to all of the agents that are watching this right now, that are maybe a little bit confused about what's an agent and what's an advisor, what would be the points that you would tell them to improve or to start doing in order to start receiving this advisor perspective rather than just being an agent?
Okay, let's talk about that in the metaphorical sense of you. Let's say I put together a garden, right? And I've sown my seeds because I want to reap the fruits of my labor. Now, an agent has a very, very restricted view. That perception is, I've got a client, I want to close a deal with this client, and that is that, right? And a lot of the times, they burn the client in the process, right? Where the client makes a loss. Consumer's not happy about that. Chances are they don't return to the market, and chances are very high that they start to stereotype these agents, right? Because of that. So an agent will say, okay, I've planted these seeds, a plant comes out, done, I'm taking out that one plant, and to hell with the rest of the garden, right? An advisor doesn't do that. An advisor makes sure everything is waters. Because of that one plant, if you're my consumer, right? I don't want only your business, Sam. I want your entire influential network to come to me, right? Because I might close within the span of 2 months a deal with you, whereas I might lose out on the opportunity cost of closing you 6 months down the line, but it's not just one deal anymore.
So it's a lot about being patient.
It's a lot about relations, genuine relationships, right? Because if I truly have your best interest in mind, then I am not going to push you for something that's going to be only in my favor.
And we've seen it. I've personally seen it. I personally know a few agents in this market that's been in brokerages for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years that solely rely on a circle of investors that they've already built connections with, where they don't have to sell anything to anyone else, right? So they're just selling to these circle of people they know, and it's making them a lot of money.
But not only that, it's making the consumers a lot of money as well, because these advisors are a rare breed in the markets, right? Let me ask you, take the masses, right? All the consumers in Dubai, even internationally. What happens when they start taking a different approach? When they no longer contact agents? When they're on the lookout only for advisors? What do you think happens to the other 4,500, 5,000 agents in this market? Do they persevere, and do they ride the wave until something changes, potentially?
They're forced to learn how to be a proper advisor.
Exactly. Right? They either adapt or they wither away, right? And that's where the market change, I truly believe, will happen. It's the realization that consumers need to have at the back of their minds when they try to approach this market.
And I can see it happening. I see it with you. I see some of your trainings that you do, and since I've known you for the last couple of years, I know now how much you focus on that. And there's probably few other people running real estate agencies in Dubai trying to get to that point as well. How far do you think it is from getting to that point? You know, how far do you think Dubai real estate market is getting to the point where, okay, you're in Manhattan now, you're in New York, you're not going to speak to anyone, but who is a specialist advisor in the real estate industry? How far is Dubai from that?
Decades. It's still a long time away.
10, 20 years.
Because the masses will not change their minds arbitrarily or on a whim, right? It's not something that happens overnight. This is a slow rehabilitation of the mindset that people need to endorse when they approach this market.
Right.
And it's as true as that, honestly.
Well, look, this is something that I would love to see happening in my lifetime, because I've seen it in other countries, and I'd love to see it in Dubai. But tell me something. Look, I want to focus a little bit about this office, right? I know we're going to do a special tour, walk-through video in this office, but one question that I always like to ask, especially when it comes to you, how important is it for a real estate agency, whether it's in Dubai or in any other country in this world, how important is it to real estate agency to have an office, one, that's this luxurious, two, that is this size, right? How does it benefit the consumer? How does it benefit the brokers, and how does it benefit the owner of the business itself? And why do you need an office this big and this luxurious?
I think business owners will hate me for what I'm about to say, but let's talk about, because you made 3 points there, right?
Yeah, I mean, this office costs probably millions of dollars, right? The amount of work that's done here. Can't you just run an office that is half of this cost and be as productive as you are, as successful as you are?
I think so, because it's ultimately about the workforce that's on your back, essentially. That's on you, you know, shoulder to shoulder, trudging through the mud with you. Because if I hire 5 advisors as opposed to 50 agents, the turnover of business is going to be, at least in my eyes, a lot more successful with those advisors as opposed to agents, because and the office is only going to play such a role in that, such a very minimalistic role in that, right? It might attract talents, the right kind of talents.
From what I understood, I haven't seen it yet, but from what I understood, there's a cinema here. There's a play area where you have video games where you can play. There's an entire bar that sits like 20 people, a barista. I mean, like I said, cameras don't do it justice here, but why? Do you think it's going to attract the agents that are looking to be in a professional place where they know they're working with the right technology, they know they're working with the right back end, whether it's on the marketing side or advertising or generating lead side? What kind of agents is it going to attract?
I think there's a lot of complexity there, Sam, because even small enterprises that only run a ship of about 20, 30 people, which is a quarter of the size that we are, I think they still can be tremendously successful, because if they've got the right structure in place, it doesn't really matter what kind of facade that you put behind your enterprise. It doesn't matter. You might have a multi-million-dollar office, or you might have a $100,000 office. It really depends on the workforce. It depends on the structure of that company, right? Are the right people responsible for what they ought to be doing? Are they being held accountable for what they're doing? Is that thing, is that structure moving in a very systemic way? And, is the workflow a healthy workflow?
Structure is so important here. I remember when I first started my own business back in 2016, and you go through the trade license, you go through the sponsor, you go through the buying the right equipment, and then everything is ready, visas and everything, and then day one starts, and you're like, okay, what do I do now? Right? So you get to a point where you feel like, okay, now it's time to build structure. I remember meeting with the Capital management, the owners, yourself, 2 years ago, and the office wasn't even half the size it is.
No, not even a quarter.
It barely fit maybe 15, 20 people. And I remember since then talking to you and talking to the owners of X Capital Real Estate, you guys were saying that we're going to make this big. Right? And this is one of the very first times in my life, generally speaking, that I see someone saying this and reaching
and
there
executing this,
in 2 years. So this was exactly 2 summers ago. Truly impressed.
We put our hearts and soul into what we truly believe in, and I think the fact that we've executed in the right way, at least what we considered it to be the right way,
and you've had a whole year of just like a chaos in there, right? Not just in Dubai, but worldwide.
Well, the pandemic, absolutely.
We're counting the pandemic in this. This was summer 2019. And we're in summer 2021, so 2 years ago, with a whole lot of things that happened last year. So it's technically 1 year, right? Everybody deleted 2020 from their lives.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So absolutely amazed. I can't really wait to do a full-on walkthrough through his office with you, Elkhan,
I actually want to go back to what you just mentioned there, because it's an interesting point of view that you have, and I'm curious to know how you came to that conclusion, because in terms of the questions that were asked, I suppose, is an office necessary like this? Well, it depends for who, really, right?
So when I get a call from a friend of mine who lives outside of Dubai and asks me about starting a real estate agency in Dubai and about the cost of setting everything up. And I say, look, there's no specific number that you could do because you can either start with a team of 2 or 3 agents, or you can start with a team of 10 and grow to up to 100 agents. Goes back to the point, you can set up an office for $100,000, but we could see that there's millions of dollars invested in this office from the start 2 years ago till now. Why? Why do you need to get there? And how does it play a role to the success and growth of the company? Again, how does that help?
Again, I truly believe that it depends on who you're doing it for, because if you're doing it for consumers, then to some level of degree, yes, it is a beneficial thing, because let's say that you're not just a real estate company like X Capital is. We have a manufacturing license as well when it comes to putting together furniture and fitting out properties. So to be able to display that visually to clients and to give those consumers that that confidence that what, we did this on our own, we did this in-house, right? It gives them that confidence. But let's say you don't do that. Let's say it's just a facade, just as a nice office. What's the point? Because more of a primary focus for your capital should be on your workforce, right? So the complexity there is it's variable, right? So, but then let's say from the other side of the same coin, let's say you're not doing it for the for the extrinsic factors. You're not doing it for consumers. You're doing it intrinsically for your people, right? That's a bloody good thing. right? Because it's a form of reward. It's an incentive. You know, it's an incentive for your people to be able to walk in an office similar to that.
I like how you put it together. I think incentive is something that convinced me. Yeah. I'm convinced now. Okay.
Right? Because I mean, you do want to come into an atmosphere where you feel that I've been a part of this. I've helped structure this.
And it's honestly the very first feeling that hits you as soon as you walk in the front door. It's literally the first feeling that it hits.
Ultimately, it might not be a genuine family business in terms of, you know, actual relation, but it is a family business because every individual here contributes, you know, to the upbringing of this office. Yeah. And they can walk in through those doors, be very proud of where they work.
Yes, yes, yes.
So if you do it for that factor, Sam, I believe it's a very good thing. Well, I believe it is necessary.
We'll wait till we do the video that I'm promising everyone that we're going to do soon. Yeah. One of the other points that I wanted to talk about is very important, Elkhan. It is related to Expo 2020, right? We have all been waiting for this. Matter of fact, one of the major spikes increase in the real estate properties in Dubai back in 2013 is because the Expo was announced to be in Dubai 7 years later, right? So we're in August. Expo is 2 months away from happening. However, the real estate market in Dubai has been booming since pretty much November last year, 2020. Yeah. And it has been on a rise since then. It did not stop. November, December, Jan, up till August. 6 of 8 months of consistency. Yeah. Where does that come from, really? The way the country handled the whole COVID situation, the way that Europeans and many other nationalities felt how safe this country is, or has it something to do really with Expo?
I think it's a multivariable factor there, because the 3 points that you said could very well apply to us, very well, but so could 300 other points, right? Because a market doesn't grow based on one factor alone. Simply because Expo is coming to Dubai doesn't mean the city is growing purely because of Expo. Right? Sure, Expo is a huge, huge factor, no doubt. I mean, we can see just based on the success and then inevitable kind of slope downwards from Russia, Italy, and China, apart from China, obviously. I mean, you can see the contribution of one factor, right, very, very vividly, like Expo. For sure, it had a role to play. But other things could be influential there as well. How has the geopolitical landscape been across the world for the last 7-8 months?
And I think that's a very, very good point to prove a lot of the, I'd like to say, the negative people that were always saying, oh, so yeah, Expo isn't going to do much, is it going to change much? And it's even it's going to be worse once the Expo is over. I think this is the biggest proof that, look, it has nothing to do with Expo. The property market has been on a crazy boom for the past 8 months, almost a year before the Expo happens, which excites me a lot. You know, I'd love to call each and every person that said this to me back in the days that, oh, look, Expo, once it's over, properties are going to go down again. I don't see it happening.
I mean, you can speculate that. Yeah, you can. Because you can see what happened to Russia and Italy. Okay. Right, but it's just a counterbalance of the GDP increase. So whether Expo was here or not, if you eliminate that factor altogether, let's say Dubai is not coming and not receiving Expo, does that necessarily mean that Dubai is not going to have an increase in market values for properties? I don't think so. Right. It may very well still have. To think otherwise is just prejudiced thinking, right? And very nihilistic, because all you're doing is wishful thinking towards, okay, this is not a good investment, this is too risky, and it doesn't make sense. Eliminate Expo completely. Let's say Expo is going to Qatar. It's not happening here this year. Does that mean Dubai property prices don't have the right to go up?
You know, Elkhan, it's so crazy because I speak to a lot of people that are not residing in Dubai. Yeah. They're living in other countries in the world, whatever it is. And when I talk to them about how crazy the real estate market is, they say, okay, so give me examples, right? So tell me how crazy it is. I say, look, have you ever seen a project being launched with a queue of hundreds of agents waiting outside to buy, and the project being sold in a few hours. And they're like, what do you mean sold in a few hours? And how big is that project? And I say, anywhere between 250 to 500 units, for example, being sold in a couple hours. Does that happen anywhere else besides Dubai? I mean,
could be.
Enlighten me. As far as I know, I don't see it anywhere else.
I mean, it could be. It depends. So many factors again, but
I mean, we've seen in other countries, we see developers and agents trying to sell one project 3, 4, 5 years sometimes, right? Here we're seeing sold in like a couple hours.
And here's a little bit of satire. Let's say there's a developer here decides to launch a building in New York, whatever it is, right? 500 units. Perhaps the Americans might not so enthusiastically and so readily just throw their money at it. Perhaps not. But the Dubai market definitely will, because you'll be talking to your people here saying, hold on a second, let's look at New York as an option, and throw your money there. And again, this is just satire, right? It's just a joke. So, but yeah, it could happen in other parts of the world, depending on the,
I mean, we've seen queues not too long ago, I think about 2 months ago, queues that started at 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning for an opening that was supposed to happen at 9. That excites me, right? I feel like the market is just how it was back in the days, the good days, 2006, 2007, even 2014, 15, 16, 17, even. And I'm happy to see that again. The other point that I wanted to cover, Elkhan, we've seen something very recent within communities, and I'm talking about villa communities, where they introduce a specific kind of luxury villas with a very limited number of units within that community. Mind you, that these villas or mansions that I'm talking about are 20, 30 million dirhams plus, are within a community where you can still buy a townhouse
for a fraction of the price.
For a fraction of that price, 2.5 or 3 million, right? How good or how bad is that, in your opinion?
Influential. Very influential. I think that I love to see that kind of diversity in a community.
We're still in the same community, right?
I love to see that kind of diversity in a community. It's absolutely amazing, right? Because let's say you're someone who let's say you're ambitious and you want to have a family at some point, right? It's one of your life goals. You have kids. You live in a community like that. You decide to rent or buy in a community like that. And you know what? Your kids are now exposed to such a network, a potential network, right? Not necessarily completely exposed, but they have that potential, right? You're not there, and it kind of eliminates, what I really like about it is that it eliminates group culture, right? Big problem across the world, right? Your group identity, in a sense, that if you're a middle class person, you're going to be a middle class person. Bloody hell.
That's such a very good point, Elkhan.
Right? So
you took it deep to the core, right? So you took it to how good is it going to reflect on the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I wouldn't think of it this way, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but you have to, because when you look at something, right? For example, in an industry like this, you get projects. I'm trying to sell you this unit, right? And this is the differentiation, by the way, between advisors and agents. Is that an agent will tell you, Sam, this is a bloody good project for you, let's move with it. Done, we've conducted business, let's go our separate ways. Not always, but some cases. Advisors will not tell you that, mate. We'll sit down, we'll do risk analysis. We'll talk about potentials, why it's beneficial, right? We go through the complexity of that structure, right? And you look at all of these parts, you look at all of these influential factors, because another metaphor, right? You've got a box. There's glasses inside the box. You can only see that glass. You're not considering the other corners of that box. What else could be filled in there? What are the other factors that might influence that glass being in that box, right? There's just too much to think about. And advisors do take that step, which is why I preach.
I love it. I love the way you explained it. And that was a question that I was thinking about, like, because I've seen it recently. I'm like, all right, so now I own a house that's appraised at 2.5 million dirhams in the market, but a few kilometers away, right, within the same community, maybe less than 5 kilometers away within that community, there's a house that's worth 30 million.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I always was thinking about that.
And I mean, look, you might have a golf club there, right? A clubhouse. You and that individual might end up there having breakfast one day, coincidentally.
Right.
There might be schools in that area. Your kids could probably go to the same place, right? So I know that this is a stretch, right, between what you have in terms of asset and capital value as opposed to what kind of, repairs it might do in sociology. I get it, but it's still there.
It's still there.
It's still there, isn't it? Right? Because
you're still living within the same radius with those people. Agents. I always go back to agents. I got to cover something important really with you because I don't think I ever covered this one.
Okay.
But I would like to dig deeply into your mind because I would like to know, because knowing the team that you have built in AX Capital, knowing how successful this team has been with the developers across Dubai, you built a really good team, Elkhan.
I appreciate that.
What are the things, and how do you obviously do the interviews yourself. I was told that you would not accept HR to do these interviews on your behalf, that you sit down yourself.
I think it's one of the things I respect about AX Capital the most. It's not just my decision there, but I would have requested this anyways. But AX Capital was the one who took that step initially, saying that if you're in a managerial position, you're better off doing it yourself. Right, which is what I respect the company immensely for that kind of decision.
So tell us, I mean, maybe we can benefit a lot of us that watch these videos. You sit down with an agent, whether it's an interview or it's outside. What are the things that you look at directly? What are the things that you are able to study and analyze in that agent's character, skills, and knowledge that will tell you, okay, you know what, this will be a perfect fit on my team, or it won't? What is it that you look for?
Brilliant question. Bloody hell. I think that one of the things that I definitely look for is your ability to listen, right?
Okay.
And one good way, by the way, and this is a bit derailing now, but I've recently found a love in the world of psychology, so I've been blending these three worlds lately.
I've been noticing.
Yeah. So, there was a psychoanalyst back in the day called Carl Rogers, and one of the things that he would do was, in terms of trying to realize how well he was actually listening to his patients, he would ask, so you and I are engaged in conversation, right? I'm the psychiatrist and you're the patient, right? Hypothetical situation. So, in Carl Rogers' position, after you finish what you're trying to tell me, I would try to reiterate that and say, Sam, just to understand you correctly, this. Am I right? Right? And he realized that 80% of the time he was actually wrong. He did not really understand what the person really meant.
Very good point.
Really meant. And that's one of the things that I really try to pick out in people, is their ability to listen. Because if you want to achieve an advisory and an educational point of view in this market, you have to be able to listen to people. You have to do it.
That actually explains it all.
Yeah.
We've all been there, where we face something similar to this. We have met people in our lives that they're not able to listen, and then we immediately judge on them. So that's a very good point. That implies whether you're going to have an agent that's easy to coach, or whether you're going to have an agent that's hard to coach.
That as well, but I think more primarily was their ability to be able to actually listen to consumers. Because when you come in there, I mean, let's be honest, we normally don't really know what we want, right? Talk about a car showroom. You go in there with the agenda of buying an E-Class of a Mercedes showroom. You walk out with an S-Class. I mean, come on, right? It's just evidence, right, that we don't truly know what we want. And we need experts in the right field to be able to help guide us to what we really should be going for. Because it's easy to go for what you want. It's very difficult to go for what you need, right? And what we need is usually bare bone minimum. But we always try to press on what we want, right? That kind of rapacity, that kind of internal desire to, like, I don't want that E-Class, I want that bloody S-Class because of this, that, right? So I think advisors really have to bring people down to earth and say, hold on, let's work with actually what you need, because if we do that, then what happens to your investment portfolio, your wealth portfolio, your overall kind of livelihood over the years? It becomes better, right? Everything becomes better.
I agree.
Whereas you can make a mistake and buy a 1 million dirham asset when you have a $500,000 budget, and you've just demolished how you're going to be living for the next 10, 15 years, right? If it's a payment plan or a mortgage, I mean,
100%.
come on.
Another thing, on a side note, I mean, the one thing that impresses me about you is your managerial skills. Obviously, I know how good you've built your team. Turnover in your sales team is generally high in all fields, right? Let's not hide behind our fingers, right? Every corporate maybe is blamed for having a high turnover in sales, but in my opinion, that's part of sales.
It is.
What I have seen in your team, and honestly speaking, not just because this is in front of you, honestly, generally speaking, you probably is one of the only person that has a team within a company that has the least amount of turnover. How do you maintain that? What are the things that you do, right? So I know each and every one on your team, Elkhan.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, well, bless. Yeah.
Each and every one, right? AX Capital, I believe, is 100+ agents.
Yeah.
I know them all. And honestly speaking, probably 99.99 of them are happy, and they've been with you for 2+ years.
Yeah.
How do you maintain that?
I think a lot of it has to do with me, in terms of my responsibility to how I approach the interview, right? I'm not talking about this like I'm pumping anything up, but I had a high turnover of individuals, right? And it's natural, it's just human error. You make mistakes sometimes. And what do I mean by when I say me is that I try to be selective as much as I can, because I am scared of actually ruining your, a portion of your life. If you come in there for 4, 5, 6 months, Sam, and I was that detrimental factor that, was recruited you, and I made the mistake, you've lost 6 months of your life, whereas you could have been doing something significantly better for yourself. So I'm always very scared for that when it comes to people, right? And it does make me think a lot. So I try to be selective. I try to engage with people who are good listeners, who are very industrious, who know what they want and what to achieve over the next, God knows how many years.
And your trainings, Elkhan, I've personally sat in your trainings. I've sat in a few of them. I'm not exaggerating. Your trainings are addictive.
Oh, thank you.
No, I'm not exaggerating.
I don't say compliments well,
your
but
trainings are addictive. The amount of knowledge that you can get from your trainings each and every time you go to these trainings, because I've attended at least 5 or 6 of them.
I appreciate this. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, they could be a little bit more, but it's generally different every single time. It's not the normal corporate trainings that happen every time. How much does that help your team to continuously, unconsciously put the effort on a daily basis? Naturally, it becomes their natural habit, almost, just because of what kind of knowledge they get from you in these trainings.
My agenda with this is not to make anyone change their minds in the way they think, right? Because I'd like to believe that when you've been recruited, you were recruited with the right purpose and the right mindset, right? So you already have a very valuable opinion as an individual, right? So these trainings are not meant to change your mind in any formal way. They're just there to make you a bigger bag of tricks than you were the day before, right? Just to add in tools into your arsenal of knowledge. I mean, we're all education seekers at the end of the day, right? I love to listen and hear every single day, believe you me, Sam, I'm sitting down and I'm listening to some lecturer, right? And that pursuit of knowledge for me has always been, at least over the last 1 year, has been a huge part of my life. Does that mean I change my opinion about what I think? Most of the time, no. But it enlightens me in brilliant ways. And that's the hope that I have when I bring in these trainings. Obviously, if it helps anyone in any particular way, then I couldn't be more happy.
The other thing that I actually noticed during last year, during the April, May, June, July, up till August, we've seen a lot of people that were coming from different industries, obviously because they were let go during the pandemic, and joined real estate. I know that you took on few people to the AX Capital team under you that almost had zero knowledge in real estate.
Yes.
Some of them had like a very limited amount of knowledge in sales to begin with, right? And you've took on these people, and these people are still here.
Yeah.
Right? And from what I heard, these people have actually managed to close some big deals.
Yes.
Right? And if I'm not mistaken, some of these people came from aviation.
Completely different industries.
Right? So
completely different
would
industries.
you continue? I know being part of the whole 2020 pandemic, you were like, okay, trying to take chances, but would you still take on the same chances in 2021
100%.
with the current situation?
100%.
Considering the rise of the real estate market this year?
I think it has so little to do with what you know today at the potential of what you may know tomorrow. Because if you come into an interview, and I mean this cross-demographically, cross-industry, cross anything, if you meet a person who sparks something within you, and you feel that, if you really feel that this person is meant for something more than what they're currently as, I think that you'd be a fool not to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Because to be honest, it wasn't just one. I mean, I personally witnessed this. I personally witnessed a few people coming on board the AX Capital team and go from not knowing anything about real estate into closing deals in millions of dirhams. And these people's life now changed forever.
But you know what I love about these individuals the most is that they've not changed, they've not changed internally because
money changes people?
Yeah, they're still the same people that I met. They're still the same humble people, still, approaching life with that humility.
The effort towards work every day is still the same, right?
And they're bloody grateful for, for being given that opportunity. I mean, I cannot fathom a reality where, I cannot accept a reality rather where this would not be possible. I truly would never work in an industry or a company for that matter which put a restriction on that kind of thing. If somebody truly has the potential, at least even if you feel it, you might make a mistake, that's normal. You might make a mistake in your recruitment process. But if you feel that somebody has that potential, again, give them the chance.
And I could see it because I also saw, obviously your team grew from 20 people 2 years ago to 100 plus people now. I've seen agents that were in your team. Your team obviously grew, that you're not able to personally look after all of them, that you actually had agents become managers. It wasn't just one. I've seen few of them. How much do you think that's important to people that are joining AX Capital? Because, look, a career is a career. We all at some point in our lives think, okay, where am I heading with this, right? Being an agent is great. You make a whole lot of money, you're happy with that, but I believe it hits you at a certain point in life.
You have the potential to make a lot of money. It doesn't mean that you are. This is why a lot of people are jumping ship and coming into this industry saying that bloody hell, I'll become an agent and I'll make a lot of money.
Is that the mistake?
That's such a big mistake, right? If you come in here with your heart's in the right place and your mind's in the right place, yes, money is the byproduct of this industry, Sam, and it will come gradually and it will come naturally, right? To the point where you will be able to live a good life. But if you come in here with the purpose of money, you're in the wrong place.
Okay, I get it. The managers that graduated from under you now have their own teams, obviously. Do you still look after those? Do you make sure that, obviously because your heart and blood and sweat have been put into this company since the start, how do you make sure that these managers are walking on the same path as you now?
Well, it's one of the things why I love AX Capital is that you are given complete freedom in that sense. And I don't want to remove that in any form or way, because I was given that freedom initially and still am today, obviously. And I want the managers to experience the exact same thing.
Right.
I think one of the things I'll tell you very clearly, why I respect this company so immensely, is that your time is really valued as an individual.
Okay.
Right? You are really respected in the sense that you come and walk through those doors, you become employed by AX Capital. And the structure here is wonderful. I've never seen this in an industry or, across our contemporaries. Never seen this. You walk in here, you're a property expert in the beginning, and in a relatively short time, you're no longer a property expert. All of a sudden, you're a senior member of the facility now. Time after that is that you become a manager, whether in sales or you become a junior director if you want to work independently, whatever it is. And that career growth in a sales industry is a rarity.
Of course.
Right? It really is rare.
Especially in real estate itself.
And you're given such a fair playing field to achieve that. Right? And I'm not saying this because I'm employed by Ayache Capital, believe you me. Right? We've made our fair share of mistakes and we'll continue to do them. It's trial and error, right? So where the company has made decisions where I completely look at with pride, I will definitely hold that close to my heart. And if you go to, not to talk bad about our competitors, but in this industry, it's not really heard of to receive promotions en masse, is it? It's not really heard because you're an agent.
Right.
And you'll stay an agent. You might make
That's
$500,000.
exactly what I meant before. At some point it will hit you.
Yeah.
Right? There is potential. I'm not saying you're guaranteed to make money as an agent. There is potential to make money, but yet career growth is always something that everybody will think of, and I've seen it happening here, generally speaking.
You want to always, for a healthy mindset, I think one of my favorite psychologists today, Jordan Peterson, he's identified very empirically how a dominance hierarchy actually is structured.
Okay.
Right? And the fact that it does exist, and the fact that it is associated to your circadian rhythms and how you feel in the morning and how good you feel, right? And you want to be always looking at that next layer of that dominance hierarchy, right? A dominance hierarchy in a business point of view is that hierarchy of promotional statuses. Right. People want that. You can say you don't, right? But there's enough evidence that people do want that.
Of course.
So to be given that opportunity in any company, I'm not talking Ayache Capital, any company, is incredible.
I've been asked by a couple agents that know me directly, know that I know you and I know the owners of Ayache Capital, whether they're a good fit.
Yeah.
Right, to be in Ayache Capital, whether it's in the primary sales or whether it's in the resale segment of this market, and I would like to sit down and talk to you, right? And I say, look, this guy is busy, generally speaking, but if I get to a point where I can put you together, I'll be more than happy, and I think we should do that next.
I'd love to.
I think we should put few of the agents that I know together.
I would love that, yeah.
And it's more like a workshop. Back in the days when I needed to hire a specific number of people in, let's say, 1 month, and I didn't have time to interview, right? I would just do one workshop, invite a few candidates over, and I just have like a workshop for like 4 to 5 hours, and by the end of that day I knew exactly who I wanted or who is like a perfect fit. I don't like to say who I wanted because then it sounds like I'm picking, but there's always, in my opinion, there's always like someone who is a good fit for that company and someone who's not.
Naturally.
From what I understand, this is it's a very professional structure here. It's like you get everything that you need as support, but also you have to be very responsible to the place.
It's reciprocal, right? Yeah. And if you don't maintain that reciprocity, then you respect the company and it respects you back, and you maintain that reciprocity, and it's an absolute must that you do that.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
I think we need to pause for a moment.
Yes. And what I'm gonna do, we'll pause for a moment, and then we'll get back in a few minutes, and then we'll continue this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always try to bring the most amount of knowledge doing these podcasts and these expert sessions with you, where agents or advisors, whether you'd like to call them agents or advisor, can benefit as much as they can from it. Because honestly speaking, I'd love to agents benefit from this. Yeah. But how do they really benefit? If I'm not bringing in real life examples of what happens in the real estate industry and how does purchase of a property starts with an agent and how does it end, if, in my opinion, if you're not bringing real life examples, then you're only helping to a certain limit, right?
Yeah.
Considering you, knowing how detailed and how well tailored your conversations are with your clients, the question is, how should every agent or advisor in Dubai look at what are the essentials in terms of questions that should be asked to the consumer on what asset they should buy? How does it start?
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure you've had hundreds of these examples happen in your life, and I know for a fact, knowing you, that most of your real estate transactions that you've done are investors, clients that got into a point where they trusted you just because of questions that you've portrayed to them.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
It's not only about being able to have the ability to answer questions, but if you can give an answer and execute the answer the way that you promised it, I think that's a fundamental, right? That's the precursor to any sale, because once you achieve that, right, talk the talk and walk the walk, it's very important. For example, I've recently taken on a gentleman who has 100 million dirham asset portfolio, and for confidentiality's sake, I'm not going to share his name. Now, he has been acquiring assets since 2003.
So that's almost $25 million USD dollars.
Give or take, yeah. So his entire portfolio has been on the back of acquisition.
That's properties he already owns?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, whether commercial, whether residential, leasehold, freehold, etc. So for him, what I did was, we had about a 4-hour conversation, and I had realized that in a reductionary sense, what happened was that this man had been on one side of the fence for too long, right? So you come into an industry, and this is investment, Sam, at the end of the day, right? It doesn't matter if you live there or not, it's an investment, right? And you have to treat it that way. It's your obligation to do that. Unless you wish to buy it and, and live there to the end of your days. That's a different story.
When you're dealing with someone that has a portfolio of 100 million dirhams worth of properties, you only have one shot.
You only have one shot, and you better damn well make sure that you don't miss that opportunity.
Your first meeting was 4 hours.
Yes, yes. And the consensus there was after...
I mean, I wish there was a camera in that meeting to record what happened, because I personally never dealt with an individual at this caliber.
Yeah.
And I would love, I mean, if these things were documented, right, you'd probably see a lot more people doing it, because there is something that's done in that meeting that made that person eventually go on to let you manage that portfolio, whether to
I took on his portfolio, and essentially what we'd realized was that since the year 2003, all he's been doing has been going for acquisition. That's a big mistake for an investor, right? Okay. And it's blatantly obvious why, right? It's so axiomatic, because when you look at an investment industry, the way you make money in it is acquisition, liquidation. Buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. That's how it works. In the crypto market, in the stock market, in the commodity market, in the real estate market, in the 401k market, doesn't matter what. It's an investment channel, and the way you make money is those two concepts. You buy, you sell. That's how the profit is generated. If you purely focus on acquisition, or if you've gone for acquisition and then you purely focus on liquidity, it's a mistake, right? In the sense,
what led to that conclusion? Were there specific questions that were being asked from your side?
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, right? I mean, you tend to be able to ask these. You should have the proclivity of asking questions that are not arbitrarily asked. You ask them with a meaning, right? You try to go inside the person's shoes and say, but why have you done this, right? Not necessarily that it was a mistake, perhaps he wanted to do it, right? And perhaps there are individuals who want to do that, just park money, right?
And what makes me think is that someone on that caliber, so invested in 100 million dirhams worth of properties, whether it's one agent that he bought all these properties from, or whether it's 10 agents that he bought these properties from, the point is, he's not with those agents anymore.
Yes, exactly.
He's with you.
He's looking for investment advice.
So if, in a nutshell, if these agents were doing their job, you think...
He would never leave them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's one of the most fundamental things, right? That if you break it down to a bare bone structure, you as an advisor, doesn't matter who you take on board and who you take on as a client, who you take into your portfolio, what asset portfolios you manage, and perhaps even towards the future, build a relationship strong enough, people might even trust you with their wealth portfolios, right? Give you a limited power of attorney to start doing their business here,
Okay.
right? It can go to that degree, truly, right? But agents do not have that in their habitual circuitry. It's not there.
How do
It's
we
about the
teach them?
short-term
How do you
goals.
tell them that, look, guys, these are the kind of questions that you should start asking in order to choose the right asset for your buyer to purchase, where you'll almost guarantee when it's time for that investor comes in to buy another properties, he's coming to you, he or she, or coming to you.
I mean, you could ask that, but the answer would be a little bit skewed, right? Because, look, when you meet an investor, a person in general, right? You and I are having a conversation. I can't give you the same questions I would give it to another individual because you're idiosyncratic compared to anyone else,
Okay.
right? And that idiosyncrasy it's too delicate. I can't be asking or imposing the same questions to you that I would to another individual.
So they would have to assess and judge based on the investor's character, or how much that person is open with them. They have to kind of like do their own analysis.
Yes.
They have to be their own strengths.
Yes,
in a way.
absolutely.
Okay.
I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
Because one of the most easiest ways to do that is to have a genuine conversation with somebody. Have no agenda, right? And the problem with agents is that when a consumer meets an agent, there is that part of their subconscious that believes that there's something there, that the person has an ulterior motive, right? And I stress this to anybody walking through my doors or our doors here. When you meet an agent, don't think that. You irrefutably believe that there's an ulterior motive, right? Agents always have that because you don't have genuine conversations with people.
You know, this is so on point. You know, there was this old man. I hate to say old, but this guy was in his like mid-60s, right? But he was almost in a good shape. So this is a story told to me by a friend.
Yeah.
And this person would go to this gym that's found inside of a community. And my friend telling me this, that he would see this gentleman, older gentleman, go in there, and they would not talk, though they're not too far apart from each other. They're both exercising. And at some given point, they end up talking, right? Long story short, so that gentleman is eventually a gentleman who has just retired, is a partner in some sort of business that's so huge. If I'm not mistaken, they're on a level of like construction company that builds airports.
Wow.
To countries, right? And that gentleman lived in that community, in a villa within that community where my friend lives, but also owned 20 plus townhouses and villas in that community for the sake of an investment. And he said to me, I remember him saying to me, he's like, Sam, I could have never in a million years think that this 65 years old working out in this gym is who he is, or owns what he owns within a community that I live in personally. So that relates to how do you assess, how do you judge, how do you analyze, and, and going into that genuine conversation that you were talking about, because these two people met at the gym.
Yeah, that's assumptive prejudice. That's literally what it is, right? You don't know what's behind that cover. You really don't. So, and the only way you discover it is, take the biggest cliche of the world. You can't judge a book by its cover.
True.
How much truth is there to that statement?
100%.
Right? I mean, I'm reading a book, for example, I might be reading a book, The Myth of Mental Illness. It has nothing to do with this, right? Or it has a fraction of, of the actual, accusations that are being made that are based on the title. So, and the book's entirely about something else, right? It's about pretenses and falsifications and, political constitutions. There's so much in that book that doesn't have anything to do with the basis that it's titled on.
So are you almost telling me, Elkhan, that for the agents that are watching this now, are you almost telling me that don't be overwhelmed or overcomplicate yourself with questions when you're dealing with an investor? that will lead into an answer to know which asset to buy. Just let it flow in a way. Is that what you're trying to tell us?
100%.
So let it flow.
100%.
Have a genuine conversation with that person. Understand them as a person first, and then understand them as an investor or as a consumer's point of view.
There's business relations and there's personal relations.
And I think, to be honest with you, we're all guilty for that. I mean, I personally is probably guilty for that, you know, because you always rush.
100%.
You always rush to understand what that person want as a consumer rather than getting to know that person. I mean, in general, how important is relationship building in sales in general, whether it's real estate or whether it's outside the real estate market?
If it's not the number one place for you, you're in the wrong place. You truly are in the wrong place, because I'm privy to it as well. I remember coming across, I was still like in my early 20s maybe, when I was in the banking sector. I would meet these hugely influential people, and you know, you try to be careful with every word coming out of your mouth, but you can't hide that excitement that your body is displaying, right? I mean, yes, you're on the table. It's such a mistake.
It is,
because people don't respond well to that. Whereas if I just have a sit down like with you and I, have a genuine conversation, right? And then after we've built a basis, a foundation on a personal kind of, on a personal degree, then we can talk about the professional side.
This is so true.
Because by then, Sam, your personal desires will equate, at least to a degree, to what you want from a business perspective.
Right.
So I already know that based on the complexity of your desires, I now have segregated certain things that are important to you about the investments, and then I'm going to tailor that together and get an accurate kind of answer in terms of what you want to achieve.
So the more you're yourself, the more you're acting your normal self, not faking a smile or not faking a joke or not faking a character, the more chances are this consumer is going to click with you, right? So there's something that's
if your personalities match, then yes.
Yep. It reminds me of I've been in touch with friends back in the days that were personal assistants. Their job role was a personal assistant to CEOs to big corporates, where we're talking about a headcount of 10,000 plus employees, right? So big, high caliber of CEOs. And these different individuals that were personal assistant have specifically told me that, Sam, you know, the general communications or personal interactions that people have with these CEOs is that they're always like scared to talk to them, and hence is why those CEOs will cringe right away, or will not be attracted to you as a person to go into a further communication or a conversation. However, for the people that come in and speak to these CEOs on the same level, right? There's no hello sir, there's no hello mister whatsoever, there's no such thing as being scared, just being themselves and talking to them. That's when they ended up having the best relationship. And I learned from that. Since I was told these stories, I was told, okay, so right, you can't be scared of someone who's a CEO, you can't be scared of someone who is a big investor with a portfolio of 100 million dirhams. Eventually, if you have built the good relationship with that person, though you can, most likely everybody we could make mistakes, right? So if you do make that mistake, you're still going to be forgiven,
of course,
right? So just be yourself in the beginning, build that relationship, and then don't worry about what happens next.
So to understand you there, basically, is that your perception of this is that if you play on an equal ground with individuals, the power game, right? If you're on an equal power level, then you're more likely to successfully establish a connection with the person.
Yes. However, make sure that you're prepared. Make sure that you have the right knowledge.
Oh, of course.
Right? So make sure you're, you can't go into that level of being equal. Yes, we can be equal in terms of respect, right? Be equal in terms of the conversations, being equal in terms of energy. but also be prepared to be equal in terms of knowledge. Investors usually that are on this high caliber of portfolio,
they know what they're
investments,
doing.
they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're most likely, maybe sometimes more than an agent or advisor themselves.
Yeah.
So that is perhaps the first thing they're looking at.
Yeah.
Maybe test your knowledge.
I couldn't agree more.
Right? They probably will throw some questions at you.
Yeah.
And they won't let you know right away. They'll probably just listen to what you have to answer and how you will answer it.
Mm-hmm.
So they can get an idea of how much you know or how deep is your knowledge within that specific community or project or whatever. So be prepared.
Absolutely. I think that's such a good point as well, because if you look through structurally, right, and this is not the origination of the problem, but you are very likely employed in that position, right? You're an employee of some form of brokerage, right? And down the line, you'll meet individuals like that. And this is one of my qualms with the markets, actually, is that, yes, the consumer and the agents are there playing that game at the moment. But then you look further down, you look at the agency, the third pillar, right? That third pillar, the agency, what is their responsibility? What is their, what have they done for the success of this, right? Right. You can look further down, even further than that, sorry, right? You can look at how developers have influenced this agency to behave in this particular manner for the success of this.
Right, right.
And it still goes down to the fifth pillar of the governments, right? How has the government influenced the developers to influence the agencies to influence these two factors? Right. So I can see so much complexity in this, right? But if you talk about these two factors, right, you got the consumer and you got the advisor. And it's one of the things, and it's probably why I recruit people who are even new to the industry, because I think it's my obligation and my responsibility to inevitably make people reach that degree where there's such a force, they're a tour de force when it comes to information and knowledge and education and intelligence being switched on, right? Simply because you read the floor plan, you don't read the black and white of it. You analyze and you understand why it was done the way it was done. You understand either the competency or the incompetency of that floor plan, the dimensions, right? The utility of all the space. It really boils down to that entire thing, doesn't it? So how has the agency played that influential role for the success of the other two factors? Because I think that's also a very determinative factor.
From something as simple as knowing how to read the floor plan,
yeah.
I wouldn't want to go deep in there, but let's ask this real quick. Do you feel like there is a major lack of training, whether it's from the developer side or whether it's from the land department side or whether it's from the real estate brokerage side, of going into simple trainings as far as like showing an agent how to use or how to read or how to present a floor plan?
100%. I think that this...
If I was a consumer ready to buy and I'm looking at a floor plan the very first time in my life, I wouldn't know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's natural. It's natural. Talk about Dubai as a whole, as an entire city. What's the population? Local population. The populace is not that big.
Right.
Right? The existence of the populace is not that long, if you look at it temporally. So it's not been existent for a long time. It's been within the lifespan that you and I have had.
Right.
Right? So to be able to take such a small populace and create this monstrous presence that Dubai has across the world, you can't rely solely on the individuals who are your local populace. You need experts across the world,
of course,
right, to be able to put this structure together. It's the same principle in the world of real estate. So you look at the governing body, right? The root of the tree is the government.
Right.
Right? Who has every determinative kind of say in what the developer will do.
Right.
Because they can apply laws, right? They can apply injunctions and they have to be followed if you want to conduct business in their parts of the world. So now the developers are influenced, right? How did the developers influence agencies? Who are the next step? right? They set commission rates, right? They set projects, conduct trainings, show floor plans, show dimensions, put up show units, and it's your responsibility at the very top as an advisor to understand whether that was right or wrong. It cannot be a straw man thing. You cannot be a yes man to it.
You will be surprised, Elkhan. I still see questions till this day, despite of the fact that there are a few people trying to educate on how the industry works. There are a few people. There's questions that I see almost every day. How do I become an agent?
Mm-hmm. Go and apply to an agency.
Right. So how do I choose the right company? How do I know it's the right company for me to start? Mm-hmm. I've had these questions asked to me directly, and I always say, look, if it's your first job as a real estate agent in Dubai, make sure you're going to choose what you're going to do, right? So if you're going to choose that you're going to sell developer stock, which is just primarily sales, mm-hmm. off plan, and what we call, in other words, or resale, secondary market, because the amount of support that you will get from the company that you're joining, whether that company focuses on off plan or whether that company focuses on resale, is the percentage of your success.
That's an excellent observation.
Right? So make sure you choose one of these. Don't choose both to start with if you've never done anything.
Know what you want to do. Yeah.
I say that's the first thing you look at, and then you got to look at the history of that company in that sector, whether it's offline or resale, and then you look at a few other different factors. Is that company equipped to support you in the right way?
Now you're getting into the complexity of this, you see, and
these are the questions that are being asked every day, Elkhan. I honestly speaking, I have at least 5 people a month calling me asking me this question. Mm-hmm. Right, and I have to give them the most genuine answer, because, like you said earlier, you never want to get to a point where you ruin someone's life for 6, 8 months or 12 months.
Yeah.
When you were solely responsible for it, you're the one that's giving that advice.
And it's not only months, Sam. It could be years.
Could be years.
Right.
It could be years.
I think that why I retaliate the way I do is because it disgusts me to see people undervalue and undermine the actual responsibility an advisor has on their shoulders.
Absolutely.
Right? It really, really is a disgusting thing to see. It sickens me, because agents think about money at the cost of the livelihood of the person they deal with. Right? You can't be so inhumane about that kind of thinking.
We've seen people save their entire life, work 30, 40 years.
Exactly. You culminate a wealth portfolio.
At the end of their work life, when they're about to retire, they have whatever amount of money ready to invest in, and then someone comes in and make them choose the wrong asset.
You cultivate an entire wealth portfolio for years. And what do you risk it on? A pleasant conversation with somebody on the phone? Wake up. You'll be burnt by the bloody markets. No, it's inevitable. Those vicissitudes are inevitable. They will destroy you. And agents do not understand that. They don't understand, because the majority, the bulk of the masses of the consumers are people like you and I in the middle class. A mistake in real estate is a big, big, big mistake, which you cannot afford. It'll take a big portion of your life to repair that damage.
And that sets your reputation in general. I mean, you make that mistake once, most likely, a lot of the industry people are maybe going to know about it, right? Yeah. It's so important. Like you said, wake up, right? Wake up and act and perform as an advisor rather than just performing as an agent. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of room for that in this market, right?
Yeah, there is.
It's a lot of room, because, like you said, you just met this person that has a portfolio of 100 million dirhams worth of assets in Dubai real estate. How many of those?
And that's not considered something mind-blowing, Sam. It's not.
I'm sure there's more. I'm sure there's people that are on much more level. Yeah, I'm sure.
But it doesn't matter whether you have 1 million, 500,000, 100,000, or 100 million. It's my responsibility, ethically, morally, and in every manner towards my career and my decision, the fact that I became an advisor. It's my moral obligation to make sure that I offer you the right thing. And not because a developer put a very alluring commission rate on a project.
Because I feel like the overall reputation of a real estate agent in Dubai is almost like an immediate cringe. You hear
why do people not like working with agents?
I mean, as soon as you
it's
use
so
someone,
justified.
You're a broker and you see that immediate cringe, and you feel it.
The justification is there.
It's unfortunate, and thus, therefore, is why I always protect agents. Right? I'm always on the agent side, but also agents need to be responsible, like we said. I would love to live for the day to see that's
shifting. That shift in the market.
That day coming. You know, it's unfortunate the way it is right now.
But it's everybody's responsibility to realize that. It's every one of us who have to be very understanding of what's actually going on. You don't even need to take action. You just need to, it's like those two major sins of commission and omission, right? You know something is wrong and you do it anyways, the acts of commission. But the sin of omission is that you know something is wrong and you don't do anything about it. And you let that bad thing transpire. You can't allow that to happen. The market will not change off of that kind of mentality.
But with all fairness, like out of the 1,000+ actively operating real estate agencies, I know there's probably a lot more that are licensed, but I'd say, let's say 1,500 real estate agencies in Dubai.
Is there that many now?
I think that's like on the active side. I believe there's a lot more licenses, but they're more like of a one-man show licenses. When I say 1,500 real estate agencies, these are probably the agencies with at least 1 to 5 people team that are like actively in business, right? As a team. With my experience in the last couple of years in the real estate industry, I can say, I can't tell you the names, obviously, but I could say there is probably 15 to 20 real estate agencies in Dubai that are working towards this. Repairing and fixing the real estate agent's reputation in the market.
It's going to take a lot more than 15, 20 entities to fix this.
I mean, 15 to 20 out of 1,500 is a very low percentage, isn't it? But there is someone, at least a group of companies that are trying to do that, which is a good sign. But other than that, like you said, probably a decade at least.
A few. I think a few, personally. When we're grandfathers and our kids have kids, perhaps.
But at least, look, there's the front, there is these group of companies that whoever investors comes in from outside of Dubai lands here and goes to start the search to see what are the top companies. They are there, they exist. There's professional companies here with professional customer experience, customer service.
Can't admire that more.
With professional technology, support, teams, there are companies that exist.
The fact that there are people who realize that this issue is very, very, very stigmatic, and it will cause a stigmatization in the market if it's not repaired. I can't admire these people more simply by just saying words about it. It's really admirable that they are attempting to do something about it. And that's why I don't call them our competitors, I call them our contemporaries. Because brothers in arms, that kind of thing, right? So,
right.
And I think the more people that engage in this kind of thinking and approach the market with this desire to have a change in it, I think it is doable.
It is, and I can see it happening slowly but surely. Like I said, if you're going to be an agent, make sure you seek the advice from the right person, right? So because obviously if you were to seek an advice from someone who has never been in the real estate industry, is going and most likely going to give you the wrong advice because that's the experience they've received from an agent. So go and ask people that have done it before. You know, I like what agents do. If they're ready to go into, like, these are agents that are experienced already, not first time. They go and ask, right? What kind of structure do you have in this company? What kind of support do you have? What kind of marketing? What kind of advertising do you do? So all you got to do is simply find a friend, find someone that knows a friend that works for that company, and ask them simple questions as, what was your experience like, right? And what did you do exactly, and how were you treated, and what did you receive? And just go and ask. Don't just blindly join a real estate company and waste 3 to 6 months, because I've seen it happen so many times.
Yeah.
And it's almost like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you look at agents that started with a very limited financial capabilities, knowing that the real estate industry has no salaries, or you're solely like expecting when is your first commission or deal is going to come through, and then nothing comes through, and then you run out of money. So what do? Right? I've seen it happening. That's why I tell most of the agents that want to start, I say, look, if you want to start, make sure you have at least 3 to 6 months worth of financial backup.
You need the nets, that financial safety net.
Right? So you need that net. So these are the things that we would like to tell people that are asking, how do we become agents?
Yeah.
What do we do? We're always here. You have any questions? If you want to become an agent, Elkhan and I are always ready to answer these questions 100%. For you. Like I said, I think at some point we would like to put some people together, whether they're past experienced agents or not. Maybe make them part of this podcast, or we make some.
I would love to, because I think it's always a healthy expansion of even general thinking when you have a diversity of opinion when it comes to these kind of talks. And obviously you and I might be able to pass around a few topics, and whether we agree with them or one another or not it's healthy, right? Because it gets you thinking.
Of course.
When you have more heads on the table, again, more healthy thinking.
Right. Well, Elkhan, all I gotta say is thank you for the invitation. It has been such a pleasure.
It's been so good to see you
come
guys.
And visit this amazing office. Like I said, speechless. I can't tell you, but I promise you guys, what we're gonna do is we're going to do a separate video, an entire walkthrough of the entire office.
Yes.
To show you each and every detail in this office. A lot more exciting content coming up with me and Elkhan, and perhaps maybe with a few people
guests, definitely,
that were either agents before or were never agents.
Business owners, absolutely.
Yeah, whatever it is. But till then, stay tuned. Wait for the video that we're going to show the office, the entire office. I think we should be able to do that in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you have any questions till then, you'll know how to reach us. We're always here to support. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.